Okay, well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to IACS Visioneering, the future of meetings, where I'm delighted to be sharing our brand new 2025 Future Meeting Room Global Report with you all. My name's Mark Cooper from IAC, and I'm thrilled to be navigating you through the highlights of this year's report. Now, I am alone today, so I'm going to be controlling both Zoom and folk coming in and out, and also keeping an eye on the chat section. But some of my trusty companions here, I know Alexandra's joining us, our New York University intern. Welcome, Alexandra. And I can see I've got Encore's great here, Jason Yuntz as well. So, Alexandra, Jason, if you spot anything in the chats that you think I should stop and address, really appreciate it. But please do put any questions you've got, and I will attempt to leave enough time at the end of these highlights to be able to do some Q&A with everyone as well. But first of all, two very quick housekeeping points for you all. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. Our next webinar for IAC is one which is taking place on September 25th, exactly the same time. And for those of you who are involved in the sales and marketing process, it's a great session on strategic negotiation with third parties delivered by Master Connection Associates. So feel free to register for that one right after today's webinar. We'd love to welcome you back for that one. That's a winner. I'll also be sharing with you the recording of today's webinar and the slide deck. So no need to take lots of notes. And as it is a big group today, two things. One is to let you know that we are recording the session and we'll be sharing that with you on YouTube. The other is if I could ask you just to keep your microphones on mute, and then there's a nice clear dialogue for the session that we've got. And I'm just going to take myself off camera because that'll allow me to maximize the screen as well with everyone. But I will be back shortly as well, but you can certainly hear me. So let's kick off. Today, over the next 40 minutes, we will be, I'll give you a little bit of background in terms of Meeting Room of the Future for those of you who are not familiar with this report, and also the provenance of it, because, whose opinions are they? Do I trust them? Does it give validity to what you're hearing and what you're reading in the report? And then we will head into the 5 areas that the report covers year after year. And these are, of course, how we cover the meeting objectives, and then we'll be looking at the physical venue characteristics and the key important area as it's broken down into food, beverage, technology, ethical and sustainable venue sourcing, and all of those. But it is only a highlight. The full report is over 50 pages long, and I really encourage you to take a look at the report and dig deeper, as these will only be the highlights. You can get straight to the report now, and I'll share the QR code right at the end. So this will navigate you through. You can view it online and you can download it and share it with your teams, with your colleagues as well. It's a great report to stimulate creative thinking. So who's behind the report? Well, aside from the meeting planners, we bring together, and we feel that IAC's in a great position to bring together industry experts in all disciplines, whether they're gurus in terms of technology, food and beverage, wellness, sustainability. We use the power of the IAC community globally to reach out to our suppliers, our meeting planners, our members, of course, the operators of the great conference and meeting facilities. And we bring all of those opinions through, commenting on the data that is provided. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment. A special thank you to all of the organizations that help us create Meeting Room of the Future year after year. And you can see those research organizations are ones that are at the foundation of sharing the research, and really appreciate those, and those that step up financially. Without them, we couldn't create the quality of report that we do year after year. So really do appreciate all of our partners in helping us bring this powerful research forward. And this is our This is our birthday. This is our 10th anniversary of Meeting Room of the Future being brought to light. So I can't, believe that we're now 10 years in for this iconic report that still focuses on events that are under 200 attendees. There's lots of research and data out there as it relates to very large events. IACC, as you know, has always been really focused on the smaller conferences, the meetings, the training courses, the real powerhouse of the business events industry. So 10 years in, we've got 45,000 downloads of this report. And this year alone, over 200 meeting planners contributed to the data. And that's really important as we look at this, because these are not the opinions of IACC and not the opinions of IACC member venues around the world, but they are very firmly the opinions and the views of what meeting planners want from their business events in the future, including what frustrates them, the changes that they're seeing, and what they want from our venues. So this is our customer talking to us. So really important when we bring the meeting planner voice in every other year. And as we go through, three things that I want to point out before we get into the devil of the detail, and that is you're going to hear a lot about experience-centric planning. It is not going away in any shape or form. It is actually intensifying, and it's influencing the type of venues that we want and the types of things we want from our venues that we go to. Technology and hybrid continues to evolve, continues to normalize, becoming, our events now are 100% digitally live, and that's such an important part and way that the events are delivered today. And the venue selection, we'll talk a little bit about how venues are changing, what's shifting within our venues now. So let's take a look at that first section, which is all about fulfilling the meeting objective. So it's the content. And as I look at it, this is for me the most exciting slide that I could probably spend the next 40 minutes talking about. But this is where we asked meeting planners around the world, those 204 that responded, what are the most important aspects of a meeting? Now, for every one of those years in the last decade, we've been running Meeting Room of the Future. 9 of those years, education, content, and topic has been number one. It's not surprising. Every year it comes up. Look at where things have changed in 2025. I find it absolutely amazing that meeting planners put the venue physical characteristics and the food and beverage offer now above the education, content, and topics. Isn't that incredible to think? The importance of what we provide as meeting venue operators had just increased over and above the importance of the actual content and what they're coming together to deliver. So it really is amazing to see that live in action. And yes, the importance increased as well, but then the value and the importance around quality increases as well. So we're firmly in the spotlight. We're now regarded as a critical component in supporting meeting objectives, and particularly through the food and beverage and the physical environment that we're putting our attendees in. So it's a really, really key month. Now, as we look at that, and we start to try to unpick that as well in terms of, well, what sits behind that? One of our venue operators who's very close to the meetings that they run has got a very clear view on that. And what Sebastian's saying here is that there's this clear trend amongst clients within their organization where the educational content is important, but it's more about the power of bringing people together and the role that the environment plays in opening minds, allowing people the freedoms to share their ideas, express themselves, and really encouraging meaningful interaction. So the role we provide in all of this, in the ideas generation, is filtering through to those organizations' successes in terms of products and service development. So what that's saying in a nutshell is where we put our staff and the environments we put them in to think creatively about where we're taking our business is really critical to the quality of what they come up with. So it's excellent to see, that we play such a pivotal role in this regard. When we look and ask meeting planners what is the most important aspects in 2025, four that jump out for us is number one, of course, you'll hear me talking about this a lot. Experience creation is a growing priority from an already high base. But as we look to things like the importance around room lighting and acoustics, yeah, it's really encouraging to see meeting planners, holding these in high regard. We always did for many, many years. We have as venue operators, we've known how important these things are to the experience of an attendee, but now our meeting planners are telling us. So hopefully they're evaluating their venues through these lenses in terms of, what's the quality of the lighting in this venue? How are the acoustics in the meeting area? Not just the meeting area, but also, the public spaces outside as well. And when it comes specifically to lighting and the actual quality of the lighting that's going into these meeting environments, and we'll talk about a couple of examples here, how it or in a slide or two, how it impacts attendee satisfaction. It also allows us to recreate spaces. And in the two images above, exactly the same room, conference venue in the Netherlands, quite a historic room, this one, but they've developed and invested a huge amount in their lighting to really change the tone during the meeting, to that of which when the group returned for their dinner in the evening. So we're seeing a lot of investment in lighting and a lot of importance as it relates to the acoustical impact as well on engagement. Here's another point from one of our venues in the United Kingdom, operating a number of venues in central UK, where Simon talks about clients' expectation in terms of venues needing to be more imaginative in how their space is used, but they're also developing their spaces so that they are multifunctional. So a room that can be used during the day for exhibits and socializing during breaks, but then
Stop.
importantly, being able to, use that room for a completely different purpose in the evening. So a lot of thought going into the design of spaces as it relates to that. Now let us move into the second phase. And this is a piece that people are always really interested to think about, which is the physical venue characteristics. And yes, that does include the meeting room, but it's not just the meeting room, it's the social spaces, the networking that needs to be done at events. And there's so much more of that happening today than there ever was before. It's how we use the outdoors. It's how these environments foster collaboration, and of course, the design aspect that goes into it. And what's really interesting when we look at this, first of all, in relation to that shift, I mentioned right at the beginning that there is a shift in terms of the type of venues being used. We're on a continual path where the traditional hotel, and when I say traditional hotel, a number of us, are a hotel, but the traditional one is what I would call the non-IAC hotel, which has got one ballroom and one boardroom. They're not meetings focused as IAC venues are. They continue to be in decline. And now what makes up the majority of the most venues used for those events of under 200 are the conference and meeting focused hotels and conference centers. But also you can see this, the importance of other specialty event venues. We call them experiential event venues, such as museums, vineyards, sporting stadiums. And we've seen that, a lot of these are really growing in popularity and linked very specifically to the fact that we want to create dynamic, imaginative backdrops to really fuel the experience of our meetings and events. Now, if you're here now and you represent a more traditional conference and meeting venue, encourage you not to be concerned about, this rise in other event type venues, but actually think about how you might be able to use some of these in conjunction with your own meeting and conference facilities. So how can you encourage a off-site reception or games evening or dinner or awards evening, or even a community project, in the morning at your event, coming together and collaborating with these creative event spaces, particularly if you're based in a city or, an urban location where there are a number of those in your local area, could be a great way for you to win out business overall. We're also seeing a shift in terms of a real return after a number of years of using non-residential conference and meeting venues to reverting back to residential venues, sometimes then in the more rural settings as opposed to urban settings. So it's something we're keeping an eye on. Maybe it's because the value of people being together at night as well as in the day at the conference is increasing, those social environments, the building of social bonds and relationship forming happening at night. But it's interesting to see quite a sizable uptick in terms of 2023, when we last went to the meeting planner audience and said what's important to you. This year it's raised from 22% up to 46%. I will take this moment as we're looking at these numbers just to highlight one area of importance as we're evaluating the data. Now, we hope over the size of the group that we interview and survey each time that we can get some real true global trends. And I will be pointing out trends as they might differ in Europe and North America, for instance. But also, we do have to bear in mind we're asking different meeting planners. They're not the same people. So there may be some variances that are caused over the 2-year gap, related to the types of planners we're talking to and their meetings. So again, I always say, look at this data in the context with what you're seeing. And if it's not what's playing out in your country, your region, your industry type, that you're serving, that could well be just because, you have a different client base to the one which has answered IACC survey, a call for survey this year. There's also a new question that went in, which is asking that question of urban versus rural venues. It's interesting that over 33% of the European planners were using the rural venues, whereas only 12% were in North America were using rural venues. So there's a key difference. And maybe the European one is influenced by the cost of being able to host events in certainly major cities, Paris, Copenhagen, London, etc. The costs for overnight are very high. So where there is a cost challenge, it could be driving some events back out to complete meeting package type venues, which are a very cost effective way of doing that. And then we asked, what are the must-have elements? What have venues got to have? Unsurprisingly, the one that's never moved is location, travel time, access. It remains the number one. But food and beverage, as we saw in that original slide where it moved up to second space, food and beverage sits in there as number 2. So this is the quality of the food, the provenance, the presentation qualities, the service styles to accommodate, some of the heavier networking that we require at events. The part that they're playing is now, it is really critical. And we continue as we see other areas to see flexibility of meeting space being really important. I always say that as we focus our time on what's on at the top of these charts and grids, when we look to what is slipping, what is moving as a result of these movements, the ones that sit at the bottom in terms of must-have elements, let's keep in mind that just because they sit at the bottom doesn't mean that they're not important. It could be that we're satisfying those areas now. We're not having issues. We're not putting them at the top of our mind and at the top of our list because we want to change them. Equally, they're not at the bottom because they're poor. They might be at the bottom of a list like this because they're just being satisfied their needs. And in the past, we've seen lots of moves for better technology, better infrastructure, better sustainability, improved social programs for our attendees. So it could be that they're just normalizing now, and what we've put in place is working. So it's always worth keeping that in mind. As venue operators, we know the core services and products we deliver, and we do those really well. But let's think a little bit about what our the environment that our meeting planners are in, and what it is that they have to juggle with outside of the venue. Because there's a number of elements, whether it's transportation, event technology, offsite activities, talking about how we take groups out for part of our meetings. When we look at this list, it's a big list. And each time we ask our meeting planners, what would you consider giving up, i.e., not controlling yourself, giving to an outside organization? Housing management for those where the guest rooms are not part of the contract with the venue. They're definitely willing to outsource, and there's been a big increase in that. So they're not looking to hold on to it. Transportation remains number one, probably because we have to outsource that really. Event production services dropped a little bit. So maybe we're using properties where the technology is built in, it's easy to use, and there's less outsourcing needing that requirement. But what I say is where there are outsourced elements, there are opportunities for us as venue operators to consider taking them on and providing that service to our client, extending the services that we provide beyond the typical venue one. And here's just another example of when we look at performance infrastructure of one of our members, this time in Australia, where remember I said about, what's the impact on attendee satisfaction if you get the acoustics and the lighting right. Well, here's the proofing point. In a 10-point scale, Clifton's Event Solutions across Asia and Australia and New Zealand have seen a clear jump. Its refurbishment and investment in these areas have impacted attendee satisfaction by 14%, which is incredible. But it's important to see, that those investments are appreciated and do flow through.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jason. Hi.
David Parker had an interesting question. I think refers back to the F&B offering that you had mentioned a couple slides ago in the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you. Let's take a look at that. With food and beverage offering becoming so important, do we have any further data as to what is wanted, i.e. local, sustainable, healthy, trendy? First of all, thank you, Jason, for pointing that out. David, thank you for the question. What I would encourage you to do is, yes, there is more data behind these headline trends that I'm sharing with you in the report. So I would definitely take a look at that to get a little bit more substance behind it. Also, there are some examples in there coming in from our venues in terms of what they're doing to align with those. So yeah, I don't have an example now as to what I would share, but when I do look at it from that local and sustainability piece and the trendy piece, I think are all tied in. And the example that I will give is where an IACC member knows that there is a popular social media heavy a bakery nearby that's a talk of the town, and they invite them in to do a guest refreshment break station fit out for a group on one of the mornings of their event. That ticks the box in terms of variety, ticks the box in terms of being creative and bringing in a brand that's highly regarded at that time, but also from a sustainability perspective, it is reducing the food miles as well, of bringing things in, supporting our local smaller suppliers in the region as well. So it's a real win-win-win, and it doesn't have to be that you're giving away your profitability by inviting in another organization to provide a food solution in this instance, or a beverage one. You can still build the margins in there so that it's a win-win. So yeah, good question, and thanks very much for asking that. And we will look at food and beverage trends in a few slides time as well, so we might be able to pick up on some more examples there, David. This is our lovely word cloud where we're asking meeting planners in less than 5 words what's the most important. And it shouldn't be a surprise. You are already an IACC certified venue. You are already in that top 1% in the world. So of course, natural light, flexibility, accessibility, comfort, from the furniture, from the environments are all really important. But also we can see very clearly those that have been influenced by the pandemic: ventilation, airy, clean, So those are things that have come about since the pandemic, and they're sticking and they're really important, to a point that I've even seen examples within our membership where they share with their clients the investment in their air conditioning and air purification systems as well. So really, really interesting to see that. And back to the slide, just for one moment, that I didn't point out, one of the important areas was back to Asia Pacific. There's this switch in this instance to natural spectrum lighting. Now, my understanding of this is very high level, but basically it's lighting that gets you as close to natural daylight as you possibly can be without being outside in natural daylight. So again, as we look at the importance of these, and certainly air quality as well, who'd have thought that this could actually be a selling point for us? But this is what's at the heart of their requirements. So let us now move into catering and food and beverage. Always a key area that people are really laser focused on. It is the part of what we deliver that probably can change the most and change the quickest. We can be really dynamic. We can be really resourceful when it comes to picking up on the trends. And when we ask meeting planners opinions on the food and beverage offer within a venue, again, it's a key part of the experience. And probably, this is because food and beverage touches every sensory part of our body. Look, smell, feel, touch, it just, covers it. And anyone who knows their neuroscience knows that one of the best ways to create a memory is by touching as many of the senses as possible. And there are even events designed today where every aspect of the event asks the question, how many senses does that touch for an attendee? How can we get one more? How can we get two more? So it's really interesting to see the importance that the food and beverage has just on that experience and memory creation for attendees. We continue to see year after year after year increases in requests to accommodate food allergies and personal eating plans. Whilst it remains an area of opportunity, it's also an area we recognise that is a challenge for planners and for venues alike. So having clear strategies around that is really important. And when we look to why food and beverage is so important, one of the pieces of perspective that's come from one of our members in Europe has been that in Europe especially, they feel that food and drink are deeply tied to not only culture, hospitality and social interaction, we know that, but often that guests today are aligning the quality of the food and beverage at the conference they go to as a clear reflection of the overall quality of the event, the meeting, or the organization that's staging it. So poor food and beverage, poor organization. It's as clear as that. Really interesting to see. Jessie States, who represents the largest group of meeting planners worldwide within Meeting Professionals International, talks here, and when she's looking at the data, about how we're seeing, certainly in North America, a clear shift in conversation from waste management to that of waste prevention. So that's awesome to see, and we have to do more, we know that, but meeting planners are really talking about that a lot now. Equally, when we look at what's important in different regions, a couple of differentiations there. One of those being that in North America, the priorities are visible nutritional information, food that matches the tone and fuels attendees. So that's a health and well-being one. But in Europe as well, health and well-being being attached as part of the strategy for the event to actually what the core business goals are and maybe the social goals of the overall organization. So always worth, if you're in a sales position, understanding your client's social responsibility goals, because you can certainly align with those, I'm sure. And here Tracy talks about food and beverage no longer being just a service, it's an absolute strategy for the overall success of the event, which is clear to see from that data. When we look at breaks and mealtime formats, linked to that experience creation is this overall, real value around creative food stations. So very much networking style service, not just one food offering, 3, 4, or 5 different offers, maybe, theming from a culinary perspective, culture perspective as well. But, big importance in the preference for the future to keep developing those. Healthier food and beverage options, more vegetarian and vegan options available, not forcing that, but it's certainly been a part of, from a menu planning perspective, being common and there throughout all the menu offerings. And then by equal measure, some meeting planners are wanting more frequent, shorter breaks. Others are wanting longer breaks. So all this really says to us as venue operators is, don't assume there's one trend. Don't assume there's a common 30 minutes for a morning break, 1 hour for lunch. We're seeing, we really need to interrogate the strategy with our meeting organizers to see what it is they want and then be able to accommodate against that. 43% of planners want us to reimagine our breaks and mealtime formats. So, and 74%, as we saw before, are looking at creative food stations. So, it really is interesting to see the dynamics that we've got going on here. And, food is part, a central part of the experience and not a design bar. So, we need to really play up to that as much as we can. Where there's requests for what they want to see in the future by equal measure, there is, there are those that have frustrations. And we continue to see in an environment where we've had to, for inflationary reasons and cost reasons, had to increase the costs of our food and beverage. I mean, that's a given and people understand it, I know. But where they are increasing, there is, low perceived value coming from the meeting planners that remember their event last year and the year before and what they paid and what they got. So a lot more work is going into developing menus and plans that are replacing the high cost elements with equally attractive ingredients, but ones that can help with that inflationary increase and high cost. So we are seeing, a move from, some of those ingredients that have always been a high cost, beef, shellfish, etc., to those which are, are going to help keep the costs down. We still have the problem of inflexible menus and limited dietary options. Now, again, this could refer to all of our non-IAC properties where, where we talk about flexibility, but when it comes to event actually being planned out, the meeting planner is just hit with, this is your option. There are 2 menus, choose the one you want, or 3 menus. That level of flexibility, creativity, and building around the client's need not being available when it comes to, the nitty-gritty of planning the event. Whenever I stand in front of meeting planners around the world, I always use this opportunity to say, and if you leave it until 1 week before your event to then go to your venue and ask them to be more, to come up with something super creative or inventive or bespoke for you, then you're not creating an environment for that to happen. So I always say, these conversations need to happen right up front, with lots of time on your hands, and then our venues, certainly within the IAC portfolio, are always willing and interested and actually excited to do something different for clients that really want that. And look at the other areas, lack of staff knowledge in regards to dietary needs. This is not our kitchen teams and our chefs putting together and dealing with that long list of dietary requirements. This is the team that are out front, doing that. And it's really interesting to see that we even have situations like mystery shopper auditing for allergens, where we have somebody go in as a conference attendee or looking and speaking to one of the food and beverage outlets and just testing the knowledge of the staff that are out front serving, guiding our attendees, because that needs to be as robust as the chef in the kitchen and their understanding of, allergens. Now I'm going to move into the next area, which is technology, and it plays such a critical part. And we are definitely only touching on the highlights here. There's a lot as it relates to all of these areas: cybersecurity, interaction, internet, the infrastructure for technology, that meeting planners, are giving us very clear feedback on. But let's look at some of the highlights. Meeting planners have jumped from 2023 to 2025 from 4% to 14% in relation to their use of artificial intelligence. I say this not because this gives us a call up to action necessarily for venues. And when we look at operating venues, there's definitely opportunity for AI to influence our procedures, our processes, our efficiency, our automations. And, it's surprising now when you look behind all of the systems we have in place at our venues, there's probably a good chance that AI is driving that. But this is more about our meeting planners using AI. They might be using it to evaluate their registration list and build out their dietary requirements list, or helping them with menu planning. So we should really be connected to and interested in how our clients are using AI, because there could be a role for us to play there. Wi-Fi understandably remains a top technology needed to work properly, because it's just threaded through every aspect of our communication, event, engagement. So it remains very clearly number one. Digital signage is really interesting. I've seen digital signage coming from a perspective of only ever being a TV screen that's wheeled around to, things like these interactive floor standing digital signs. They hit our industry in around sort of 2018, 19, at a very high cost point, a little bit clunky to use, required us plugging in laptops and all sorts of things in the past, to now being such an affordable, critical element of just bringing our spaces to life and changing things like our color schemes in public spaces, where it might be an exhibition in the day, but then it's hosting our pre-dinner drinks in the evening. And whether that be examples like the one we see here, which was actually an IACC event in Canada a few years back. They don't have to be as sort of portable as these. We're seeing venues that are actually doing wraparound pillar totem poles, where again it's as much about providing information at different points of the day for people in lobby areas as it is to changing the mood and light scheme, from day to night. So it's really great to see. And also I've seen some awesome affordable examples where these are battery operated and they're waterproof. They can be put outside on the lawn as, a welcome between the car park and arriving at a venue, to bring an event to life, a brand alive, and and to start communicating with our customers even earlier than when they get to the meeting room. So planners, a lot of them, 49%, have implemented these and have found it's improved communication. And of course, they're more sustainable as well. Encore, one of our event partners and partners for this research, has provided a couple of, intuitive thoughts around these, but, requests for digital directional signage, event agendas, trade show posters, even speaker bios and theme enhancing art is something they're doing more of. So actually designing art to go through them, and to go into all of the spaces that an event is taking place. And it doesn't have to be a really large event either. It can be within a conference center setting, and we use it for our conferences that are, sometimes less than 100. Just as we looked at with food and beverage, we asked what are the frustrations with technology: slow failing internet, crashing apps, AV issues, for instance, sound cutting out, hybrid streaming glitches. So planners are telling us they really need strong, robust technology support from their venue team or from their AV team there, because, when it does go wrong, all the eyes are on the meeting planner. The disruption element to an event can be huge. So again, like food and beverage being really critical to the success of an event, the investment that we put in terms of our technology infrastructure, We provide the usability of it, the support, but the continuity of service is are things that still many venues are getting wrong. And if this is a really strong part of your proposition, I really do encourage you to be shouting about it from the rooftops. Planners using tech carefully. So hybrid, they're using it carefully. It is a top failure concern. There's lots of moving elements. Yet they also, when we asked them the question, saw it as a real positive in terms of using it for improved communication. Fewer planners were adopting new technology, except for audience participation. And again, it's probably because they've adopted enough now. They've normalized. They're happy with what's happening. They've taken a lot of new tech on coming out of COVID, and now that's starting to settle down, and people are becoming a lot more comfortable with it, and it's already built in. How internet capabilities. So an example of where you can dig into the report and look a little bit deeper. But we're seeing, for instance, an increased usage of internet reporting. So this is where we provide our meeting planners with an opportunity to know exactly what bandwidth, what they've used, what their peak times and usage was throughout their event, particularly driven through having a dedicated Wi-Fi channel for that event, which their attendees log into, and the venue are handing them back data that helps them prepare for their next meeting. And I'm hearing more and more of our properties being able to provide that information to clients. Expectation for venues to provide virtual streaming services on the day. So not in advance, not being told the week before or even the day before, but being able to react to a request to bring in some remote attendees, maybe that afternoon, or when they know that their speaker from Germany can no longer attend, or 6 of their guests coming in from Philadelphia have had their flight cancelled. They're all going to get into a meeting room and join. On the day requests are really important. And you'll see just some of the perspectives in the report. I won't read through them all now, but there's lots of opinions here as to what's driving these things. So, for instance, in-person venue inspections are back up. After a few years of virtual site inspections really being a champion and key, we're seeing increase to coming back to venues, and probably linked to all these magical experiences we want to create requires us to spend more time together with our venue sales team and leaders to develop these highly experiential venues. And now I'm going to move in just into the last area, and I know we're running out of time, so I'll be respectful of everyone's time here, and we'll have some Q&A. But let's look at the importance of ethical and sustainable venue sourcing. A lot more focus on accessibility, 73% saying it's a high ranking for them. Europe and America have, for a number of years, have not been so closely aligned in terms of importance of climate and social responsibilities, but that's not the case today. Very closely aligned. That's great to see. And we have seen a drop in human-related credentials such as DE and I decreasing in importance. And again, I think this is one where it's not saying that DE and I is not important, diversity, equity, and inclusion, but maybe a lot of our events now have built it in. So it's, they've already acted on it, and it's a common part of what we do. It's no longer an action point. We're still not measuring carbon footprints for our events and meetings in a way that we probably should or would expect. We're still seeing more venues including carbon footprint measurement against a brief in Europe than we are in North America, but expect legislation to move that, keep moving that forward. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we close out and hit the end of this presentation, just some of the considerations for you in the future. Keep everything transparent and flexible in terms of our pricing, and work where we can on that budget management. Better integrated technology, AV capabilities, and if you've got incredible infrastructure, talk about it, sell it. More flexible rooms and layouts, lower costs where we can do it, automation, help with budgets, and more on-site support from our AV and venue staff. That's really, really important. So now I'm going to open up. I'll bring my camera back on, open back up for any Q&A. Really appreciate everybody's time today. I'll stop sharing, but bring us all back. Thank you all for your time. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to either pop them in the chat. I might have one here. No, we've covered that. Or come on camera. Happy to see anyone and to share any more thoughts. Okay. It looks like we've covered everything today. So again, Jason, thank you for keeping an eye on the chat for me. Thank you everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it. We will follow up with this. I hope it's been valuable. I hope you'll participate in the future. And I'll give just two call outs as we close today's webinar. We look forward to meeting everyone in Sweden for the Knowledge Festival in just 5 weeks' time. We are close to being full for that conference. So if anyone from Europe still thinking of registering, you will need to do that very quickly as we reach our maximums there. And in the next 2 weeks, we will be opening registration for the IACC America's Knowledge Festival, which is at the beautiful Windrose on Hudson Conference Center in the Hudson Valley, New York State, close to Manhattan. So really hope you can join us for one of our two IACC conferences that are coming up in the coming months. Just wish you all the very best in designing your venues, your services, your products, your rooms, your spaces for tomorrow's meeting planner. And thank you for joining today's IACC webinar.